understand, Master. I feel the power you spoke of in my dreams.
Asterion and the Master are the primary antagonists in the Blasphemous 2 Mea Culpa DLC, and for me the most compelling antagonists in the game. The conflicted yet devoted Asterion, his enigmatic Master, and the aspirational Brotherhood they belong to form intriguing parallels between the journey of Penitente and a bridge between the ancient history of Blasphemous 1 and the future of Custodia. In this video, let's explore the story and lore of Asterion, the Master, and the Brotherhood within the Mea Culpa DLC. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the Lore Hunter for more Blasphemous content. This is the first official lore video I've done on the Mea Culpa DLC, but my channel has other videos discussing the DLC as well as Blasphemous 1 and 2 for those interested. I also feel strongly that this isn't the only DLC we're getting for Blasphemous 2, and this video is a good exploration of the Master and the Brotherhood, whose story doesn't look to be over yet. And now I'm going to take a moment to talk about the sponsor of this video, Project Orochi. Viewers of this channel know that I like apparel with a video game inspired design that those in the know will recognize, and everyone else will think just looks cool. And spoiler alert, I also like big sales, discounts, and new designs to check out. Project Orochi has all this and more. They're a streetwear brand that blends Japanese art and mythology with subtle nods to games I love like Dark Souls, Sekiro, and Elden Ring. I just snagged a couple new tees for myself, and while I think the Murray and Consort tees look incredible, I have a special place in my heart for my Academia tee. I'm an architect by day and a video game architecture nerd by night, and not only do I love the architecture of Raya Lucaria that inspired this design, but I also love how the design is white on a navy blue tee, evoking old school blueprints. And although gaming tees are what drew me in, Project Orochi has some great non-gaming designs as well. I've been wearing Project Orochi tees for years now, and they still look good and feel comfortable. I'm also a fan of a company that is clearly run by humans for humans, and they make that clear through their social media presence, where they're always talking about upcoming designs and holding giveaways. And not to bury the lead, but they're running a big Black Friday sale this week and releasing a new collection on the 29th. These sales go fast, so I recommend checking out their website linked in the description sooner than later. And if you're watching this video after Black Friday, I got you covered. Use promo code LOREHUNTER for 10% off your order. They also offer free shipping in the USA, which is great. Once again, big thanks to Project Orochi for sponsoring this video. Now, let's talk about the Master and Asterion. Before getting into the narrative of the Mea Culpa DLC, we need to discuss the backstory of Asterion and his Master. This backstory and lore about the Brotherhood was teased to us in the form of placeholder achievements put up on Steam before the release of the DLC. These achievements described the 9 disciplines. These are disciplines in the academic or ecclesiastical sense, teachings and conduct that are imparted from master to disciple. I spoke at length before the release of the DLC about each of the 9 disciplines, identifying references to inspirations and connections to the series, as well as speculating about what these 9 disciplines could mean for the story of the DLC. While that analysis varies in how applicable it still is, perhaps the New Game DLC content is about creating the Guilty Blade, and then New Game Plus is where you can use it from the start. It's a good place to hear about each of the 9 disciplines in detail, and learn about some of the fun references slid into the descriptions. For the purposes of this video, I'm focusing on how the 9 disciplines tie into the story of the DLC to better understand the motivations and backstory of Asterion and the Master. To start, the 9 disciplines were created by the Brotherhood that Asterion and his Master are members of. In the achievements, the 5th, 6th, and 7th disciplines speak about the long lineage of the Masters and the ancient history of the Brotherhood. These disciplines characterize the Brotherhood as an ancient organization whose teachings have been practiced across many generations of master and disciple. The 9 disciplines describe the rituals and rites through which the disciple prepares for and then embarks on a sacred pilgrimage. As will become clear, the Mea Culpa DLC takes place after Asterion has completed these 9 disciplines, and boy, what a process it was. In the first discipline, called the Silent Duel, Asterion faced his master in combat at dawn, and the master offered his life as the last act of teaching. It's worth noting here that silence isn't a tenet of this Brotherhood. We hear Asterion talking all throughout the DLC, and even though we can't hear him ourselves, the Master talks to Asterion from beyond the grave. The significance of silence in this duel was the Master imparting this final teaching to his disciple through his death. The silence, as we will see, is temporary, as the following disciplines involve Asterion following his master's teachings to establish a connection with his dead master beyond, the silence breaking as Asterion receives instructions on his sacred pilgrimage from the spirit of his master. After the duel, Asterion embalmed his master with secret ointments and ancestral mixtures to defy the passage of time and preserve the master. Again, these ointments and ancestral mixtures imply a long lineage to this Brotherhood and their practices. We know from the achievement for beating the Faceless One at the start of Blasphemous 2 that it has been 1,000 years since Blasphemous 1, so an ancient Brotherhood in this context could have easily formed after the events of the first game, but we don't know the timeline definitively. After the Master was embalmed, Asterion shed tears, collecting them in a lacrimatory that he carries around his neck as a symbol of eternal mourning and devotion. I spoke about this in a video discussing the most hidden item in the DLC, the Blessed Lacrimatory, and it's worth bringing up here. A lacrimatory was a real-world vessel used in Greek and Roman culture to collect tears to mourn the dead. In the Mea Culpa DLC, after defeating all of the enemies in rooms with these gravestones, a ghostly blue aura appears above the grave. Standing beside it until Penitente goes idle triggers him to kneel before the grave, causing a ghostly blue figure to appear and bestow upon Penitente a partial lacrimatory fragment. The item description and lore for the lacrimatory items have two phrases in Latin that translate to "Let destiny be done even if I perish," and "Be patient and tough, someday this pain will be useful to you." I think it's no coincidence that there's a lacrimatory featured in the 9 disciplines and a lacrimatory featured in the DLC. My speculation is that these graves represent sites where former masters and disciples of Asterion's Brotherhood carried out the disciplines of their order. The description and lore in these items could be teachings from master to disciple, and later in the video we'll discuss how the lacrimatory could be a key component and an important part of Asterion's story. Another detail is that the ghostly blue figure that appears while kneeling bears a striking resemblance to Penitente's original design, which is likely just a cheeky nod and clever use of a cool design, but it could also further imply that the ghostly figure is a member of Asterion's Brotherhood. After shedding and collecting tears, Asterion forged his blade, which acts as both a weapon and a sarcophagus for his master to preserve his master's conscious soul. In other words, Asterion has a master sword. After forging the sword sarcophagus, Asterion held a vigil beside the blade. He recited ancient prayers and listened for the voice of his master from beyond to set him on his path. Asterion then consecrated the weapon with his own blood, sealing an eternal covenant between his lineage and the legacy of his master. These last 3 disciplines just mentioned focus on preserving the connection between Asterion and the Master, and as we will further see, the lineage of the Brotherhood. There's no indication that Asterion had knowledge of what his pilgrimage would entail prior to killing his master, and it seems that the Master's ability to guide Asterion on his pilgrimage comes from insight gleaned beyond death. This is not an uncommon concept in fiction or even in Blasphemous, and Perpetua from Blasphemous 1 comes to mind. Dying and going beyond the dream gave Perpetua perspective on the nature of the High Wills. Her voice was such that she was able to speak to Penitente and guide him on a pilgrimage to ultimately defeat the High Wills. The Brotherhood appears to have codified a means to create this connection, using it as a way to guide adherents toward whatever the Brotherhood's ultimate goal is. While their aims are not outright stated, I believe the events of Mea Culpa suggest that the Brotherhood is broadly looking to return the Church of Custodia to the orthodoxy established under the High Wills in Blasphemous 1. I'll explain why I believe this as we discuss the storyline in Mea Culpa, but keep this theory in mind as we discuss the plot of the DLC. After Asterion consecrated his weapon and sealed the covenant with his master, he entered a deep trance where he submitted himself to the spirits of old masters, who challenged his wisdom and strength to prove his worth and receive their blessing. It may have been the connection between Asterion and his master, as well as the master's connection with his master, that opened Asterion up to the spirits of old masters in the chain of connections between generations of master and disciple. Regardless, the old masters tested Asterion to prove himself worthy and capable of carrying out his sacred pilgrimage. It does make me wonder what would have happened if Asterion was found unworthy at this point. Does Asterion get to try again? Is he kicked out or killed? His master's life sacrificed for nothing? We don't know, and it remains theoretical as Asterion did overcome the challenges, but it does further reinforce that the master needed to die and pass beyond to discern the details of Asterion's pilgrimage. Otherwise, a master forfeiting their life for a disciple who may prove unworthy seems like an unnecessary risk. After completing the test, the master reveals Asterion's mission to him. Asterion accepted the mission, rubbing sacred ashes on his lips. This sealed oath of ashes reaffirmed his unshakable commitment to his destiny and carrying out the will of the Brotherhood. As we'll soon see, Asterion's mission didn't come with a lot of details. Based on Asterion's early scenes in the DLC, we can infer that the mission revealed to him was to acquire an ancient power that will help the Brotherhood achieve their goal. We'll see that the little detail Asterion gets about his mission may have been intentional, considering the blasphemous lengths the Brotherhood will ask him to go to achieve their goal, which I believe to be to re-establish the old orthodoxy of the Church. Now that he was fully locked in, Asterion set out on his pilgrimage, each step a legacy to his master, bringing him closer to achieving his destiny. This is where the events of the Mea Culpa story begin. In Mea Culpa, Asterion has completed the 9 disciplines and is now on his sacred pilgrimage to retrieve an ancient power. Asterion is first seen spying on Penitente and Hilaria, listening in on their conversation through the grating above Hilaria's cell. In this opening scene, it's quickly established that he unquestioningly serves his master, and that his master isn't the talkative type. Asterion is following his master's orders and has no idea who Penitente is or why he's spying on him. This tells us that his mission isn't specifically focused on Penitente, but that he is important for getting what they're after. It's also noteworthy that he says,
"Who is the one that hides their face from thou?"
This echoes dialogue between Penitente and Pontiff Escribar in Blasphemous 1, where Escribar says,
"But nothing I know of you, apart from your cold, nameless visage."
It's a plot point in Blasphemous 1 that Penitente's face is hidden from Escribar in his visions. I'm not going to go in depth about the narrative in Blasphemous 1 here, but if you're interested in learning more, I talk about it in my Blasphemous deep dive linked above and in the video description. The takeaway is that this line from Asterion feels undeniably like an echo of Escribar's dialogue in Blasphemous 1, and that won't be the only instance in the DLC. In the next scene, Asterion is in the Labyrinth of Tides pleading to his master for answers, his pose resting the blade of his master beside his ear as he seeks clarity.
Whisper to me. What ancient power do you seek in the Penitent One?
This is where we learn that his mission is seeking an ancient power, but that Asterion knows nothing else. Well, almost nothing else. We will see through these scenes that there are words implied to be spoken to Asterion by the master between scenes, likely in his dreams, and who this person is might be one such thing answered by the master between scenes. I say this because Asterion asked who it is that hides their face in the last scene, and now in this one calls him the Penitent One, or Penitente as he's called in Spanish, and how I usually refer to him. However, Hilaria does not name the Penitent One, and unless he's wearing a name tag, Penitente isn't giving his name away, making the master the most likely source of this information. In the next scene in the Icebound Mausoleum, Asterion appears calmer, having steeled himself in his devotion.
Oh, Master. Your silence is the lantern that guides my faith. It fills me with the strength needed to overcome the test thou hath laid before me. Could it be the fate of the silent Penitent One intertwines with my own?
Asterion likens his master's silence to a lantern that guides his faith, echoing the silence he endured after the silent duel, before he performed the disciplines to establish a connection and hear his master's voice from beyond the grave. He desires clarity, but his devotion and confidence in his master is such that he knows his master's voice will be there to guide him when the time is right. Keep in mind the faith he shows in the silence of his master, as this line will stand in contrast to a later part of his story. Asterion also sees this silence as a test, that there is something else he should be able to glean from the information he has. He correctly discerns that Penitente's fate and his are intertwined, even if he doesn't understand how yet. The next scene with Asterion takes place in Santa Vigilia, and it seems clear that Asterion has heard his master's voice between these two scenes.
The one we trail is searching for something very old, something sacred. He heads to a destination close in distance, but distant in essence, a threshold hidden from the world, reserved for his sole presence.
Narratively, this dialogue tells the player that Penitente is searching for Mea Culpa and foreshadows that he will be traveling to Chrysanta's dream to retrieve the hilt. However, Asterion wouldn't be able to piece all of that together without some assistance. Penitente isn't exactly the chatty type, so he's not going to overhear him laying out his plans. His master, by comparison, is a gabbing machine. It becomes clear in the next couple scenes that the master has foresight and that he has knowledge of Chrysanta's dream and her possession of Mea Culpa's hilt. Asterion's mission is to retrieve an ancient power for the Brotherhood, and so at this critical juncture the master imparts this information to Asterion, at least to some degree. That's because the Mea Culpa is of course the ancient power they're searching for, and Penitente is the only one able to enter the dream and retrieve it. This is important for Asterion to understand so that he can follow Penitente and steal Mea Culpa's hilt once Penitente pulls it out of the dream. And that's exactly what he does. Now Asterion understands that the Mea Culpa is the ancient power he was asked to retrieve.
I understand, Master. I feel the power you spoke of in my dreams. It burns in my hands. Its sacrilegious virtue will make them tremble before me.
Asterion recognizes the sacrilegious virtue of Mea Culpa, its ability to slay the divine. He states that this quality is what will make them tremble before him, indicating that he understands the purpose for which he has retrieved this weapon. So who does the Brotherhood want to make tremble, and how are they going to use Mea Culpa to do it? The exercise of pursuing these questions is why I believe that the Brotherhood's goal is to lead Custodia into an era of orthodoxy harkening back to the time of Escobar and the High Wills, but I didn't start there. My first thought was that they wanted to slay the Child of the Miracle, but that doesn't really pan out. The background of the final battle with Asterion counts for the heart being intact if Penitente hasn't fought Devotion Incarnate, as well as the heart being destroyed if he has. There's also a lack of evidence to suggest their goals involve the Child of the Miracle, but if the Brotherhood isn't seeking to kill the Child of the Miracle, what motivation could they have to wield Mea Culpa? The other two options that come to mind are that they intend to wield Mea Culpa against the Miracle or the High Dramatist. While it could be the High Dramatist, we don't really know enough about this enigmatic figure briefly mentioned by Annunciata, and so I'm inclined to say that the Brotherhood wants to wield Mea Culpa against the Miracle itself, but not to kill it. Asterion says that it will make them tremble before him, suggesting that they intend to use it as a threat to instill fear. The Miracle is an avatar of creation in which it manifests into reality the thoughts and dreams of the Custodians, with the most powerful example in Blasphemous 1 with the High Wills themselves, who formed from the belief the Custodians had in the orthodoxy of the Church. If that idea is a revelation for you, I highly recommend checking out this video about the true ending of Blasphemous 1 for more discussion about the nature of the Miracle and the High Wills. In Penitente's hands, Mea Culpa orphaned the Miracle in Blasphemous 1 by slaying the High Wills, almost destroying the miracle in the process. Therefore, Mea Culpa would be the perfect implement to make the miracle tremble and allow the Brotherhood to impose their will upon it, just as the High Wills once did. And similar to how the Custodian's belief in the orthodoxy of the Church helped manifest the orthodoxy as true through the power of the miracle, the Brotherhood wielding the legendary Mea Culpa would strengthen their claim in the eyes of the Custodians, leveraging the Custodian's shared belief to manifest as reality through the miracle. So while the Brotherhood very well could be attempting for a more general power grab, I believe that the Brotherhood seeks to return to the radical orthodoxy of the Church under Escobar and the High Wills in Blasphemous 1. If you're not quite sold on this idea yet, stay tuned, we'll continue to discuss this idea later in the video. After Asterion expresses the realization of Mea Culpa's power, he is uneasy, a dark cloud casting a shadow on his thoughts. If the Brotherhood's stated goals through the disciplines were to harm or slay a divinity, this development wouldn't faze him so much. However, I think this is a means to reach their goal that he did not expect. But despite this momentary doubt, Asterion remains devoted to his master, leaving Penitente to bleed out as he continues his pilgrimage. Penitente next encounters Asterion high above the city of the Blessed Name in Santa Vigilia, where Asterion is about to sacrifice Annunciata to restore the Mea Culpa.
Let thy will be done, Master. Let guilt and its heretical virtue be reborn. I accede to it, though it weighs heavy on my soul.
However, Asterion is interrupted in the final moments by Penitente striking out at him. He was performing the ritual that we later see Penitente complete, restoring the Mea Culpa by pulling the blade from Annunciata's chest. Knowledge of this act was likely whispered to him by his master, who we learn has now fully revealed his plan to Asterion. This act of restoring Mea Culpa through Annunciata mirrors how the guilty blade was forged in Blasphemous 1. In the opening of the first game, we see the kneeling woman pray to the miracle to make her chest hurt with regret, holding the statue of the Father against her chest. Her prayer was answered, Mea Culpa's blade forming within her chest and killing her where she knelt, turning her to stone. Penitente revisits the Church of the Kneeling Stone during his pilgrimage towards the true ending of Blasphemous 1, and we see that the architecture of the church where we find Annunciata and Santa Vigilia is strikingly similar. Also strikingly similar is Annunciata kneeling just like the woman in Blasphemous 1. Earlier in the DLC, Crisanta told Penitente that in order to restore Mea Culpa, he must force it to emerge from a chest of deep mourning and repentance, but one free from sin. Annunciata, echoing the kneeling woman, speaks of an aching pain in her chest, a sense of regret that, though she is without sin, will allow the Mea Culpa to be restored. This retroactively gives a bit of information about the kneeling woman, who was likely also without sin but similarly filled with regret and pain. And so, as it was over 1,000 years ago, the statue of the Father, the hilt of the Mea Culpa, is pressed into Annunciata's chest, forging the blade of the Mea Culpa from her guilt. And Asterion was almost the one to do it. Annunciata's destiny was foretold to her that she would be sacrificed to restore the Mea Culpa. She also mentioned earlier that destiny, still reflected in eternal scrolls, blurs and shifts with changing inks. While she knew her destiny, she did not know who would pull the Mea Culpa from her chest. She tells Penitente that she learned her destiny from a light, a voice, so close and yet so far away. Asterion describes Crisanta's dream in similar terms, saying that it is a destination close in distance, but distant in essence. I'm not entirely sure if the voice that spoke to Annunciata was the High Dramatist, Crisanta, the miracle itself, or something else. But we do see it implied that this information came from a realm beyond, like Crisanta's dream, and also where the Master is. I bring this up to further underline how the Brotherhood's disciplines were a means to send Asterion on a pilgrimage under the guidance of his Master. A Master who can see beyond the limited scope of the living, to see destiny, and to try and blur and shift the changing inks to meet the Brotherhood's goals. And to meet the Brotherhood's goal, the Master asks Asterion to steal the hilt of the Mea Culpa and restore it himself. Asterion accedes to his Master's will, intending to restore Mea Culpa and make the miracle and Custodia tremble before him, but he says that it weighs heavy on his soul. Asterion is faithful, but conflicted. The goal of the Brotherhood, that I believe to be a reawakening of religious fervor and orthodoxy, was something he fully invested himself into. He never expected that they would threaten the miracle itself to achieve their goal. While this weighs heavy on his soul, he remains devoted, fighting Penitente to keep Mea Culpa in his grasp. However, Asterion is killed by Penitente, and the Eternal Scrolls jot down that the Mea Culpa returns to its former wielder. This is not the end of Asterion, though. After being slain by Penitente, Asterion is returned to the land of the living by his master. Penitente himself died before the start of Blasphemous 1, slain by Chrysanta under Escobar's orders, and was brought back to life by the miracle. I've seen it suggested that the miracle is using the voice of Asterion's master to speak with him, and I can see why, given how the master can perform acts of the miracle such as bringing the dead back to life. I don't personally subscribe to the theory that the master is the miracle, predominantly because I don't see how restoring Mea Culpa would benefit the miracle, but also because people generally realize when they're encountering the miracle in the Blasphemous series. Radame speaks about hearing the voice of the miracle and had no doubts about who was speaking to him. That being said, I think it's an interesting theory and one that I wanted to share for your edification and theory crafting, and I'd be interested to get your thoughts regarding this possibility in the comments. What I believe is that the Master has this power because of his connection to Asterion and presence in the realms beyond. And maybe also the lacrimatory mentioned earlier. The blessed lacrimatory that Penitente receives in the DLC doesn't bring Penitente back to life, but it does fully restore both health and fervor. I previously spoke about my theory that the gravestones could be locations where former disciples of the Order killed their masters in the first discipline of the Silent Duel. I'll reiterate the description and lore of the lacrimatory items, which say, "Let destiny be done even if I perish, and be patient and tough. Someday this pain will be useful to you." My theory is that the lacrimatory may have been a safeguard should the disciple fall, as Asterion did, a way for him to continue to pursue his destiny, even if he should perish. In this case, I think that the power of the lacrimatory is also rooted in the connection between the disciple and the sacrificed master. That would make the silent duel with his master a necessary step that required Asterion to be patient and tough, to suffer the loss of his master at his own hands. In return, Asterion received through his deceased master foresight of his destiny, as well as the power to revive him should he fall on his pilgrimage. I think it's a compelling idea that feels consistent with everything we've discussed so far. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. In either case, Asterion is brought back to life by his master. I believe the mission is still to gain control of Mea Culpa, and that Asterion would continue to pursue Penitente if he didn't find Asterion first.
Penitent One, the sentence of the Holy Return has been passed down on the both of us. Eternal deaths, and their eternal returns. For our purposes are exalted. So much so, that we are as prisoners of them. So, come. Let us pit your sword of guilt against the crystal tomb of my venerated master. Two heresies in glorious combat. Return me to the delectable abyss of deserved pain.
First, Asterion remarks about their shared immortality. He's clearly conflicted about everything at this point, likening not only his ability to overcome death as a sentence of holy return, a punishment, but that his purpose, his very destiny, is exalted, and that he's a prisoner to this purpose. He sees Penitente as being in a similar situation, and it's a good point. They've both been brought back from the dead, guided by the voices of those beyond death towards a divinely appointed purpose. While we don't get insight into Penitente's thoughts on the matter, Asterion is conflicted by what he's being asked to do, but is fully devoted to his master and the cause of his brotherhood. And so he steels himself, challenging Penitente to pit your sword of guilt against the crystal tomb of my venerated master. This is a very direct echo of Escobar's dialogue before fighting Penitente in Blasphemous 1, in which he says,
"Now may your sword full of guilt with mine of gold collide."
Given all of the connections I've identified surrounding Asterion and Escribar, I think it's time to discuss a somewhat popular theory that the Master is Escribar. People have suggested that the Master is Escribar, and while I think that the Brotherhood is Escribar related, I don't think that the Master himself is Escribar. Even though I pointed out some pretty blatant connections to Escribar in this video, I've seen this theory discussed mostly around the fact that Escribar in Blasphemous 1 has a vial around his neck containing a body. This is pretty inconclusive to me. The human-sized Escribar Penitente meets in Blasphemous 1 is an illusion. Escribar's body was transformed into a giant tree by the miracle, and he re-emerged as the last son of the miracle. And I think that the body in the vial is merely a token representing himself before he was transformed. Also, in the Blasphemous universe, there are a lot of corpses and things. Benedicta holds a corpse, Lesme's head is in a sarcophagus, Radames keeps a corpse on his back, etc, etc, etc. So in any given situation, it's the context that matters, and in the case of the Master, we know that the Master was alive until relatively recently, when Asterion killed him in the Silent Duel. Furthermore, in the Judge of Shadows discipline, we see that Asterion's master is part of a lineage of masters in the Brotherhood's ancient history, which makes no sense if he was Escribar. Similar to the miracle theory, it's possible that Asterion is being hoodwinked by a force masquerading as his master, but there's nothing to really suggest it, and I think that it makes for a less compelling narrative. Asterion is a true believer of the Brotherhood, devoted fully to his master, being tested and filled with doubt, but persisting anyways is a much more compelling and personal story. Nevertheless, an Escribar connection exists. We can see that in how Escribar's words are echoed in Asterion's dialogue. This Brotherhood's lineage may go back to Escribar, or an Escribar adherent who agreed with Escribar that Custodia needed stronger faith and orthodoxy, but the Master himself is not Escribar in my estimation. The strongest connection to me with Escribar and the Brotherhood is theological and philosophical. I see this connection as evidence of the Brotherhood's theology, which is why I've suggested that they want to wield Mea Culpa against the miracle not just for power, but to force a reawakening of religious fervor and orthodoxy in the same way that Escribar was in Blasphemous 1. And so despite Asterion's doubts, he takes up his Master Sword against Penitente, saying, "Return me to the delectable abyss of deserved pain." I think Asterion says this because he's feeling conflicted and to his mind deserving of the pain of death, a death that he expects his master will wake him from if he is defeated. However, upon defeating Asterion again, something happens.
Master, where hast thou gone? Where once I heard your voice, there is now only silence.
Asterion's master is gone. Earlier in the DLC, Asterion described his master's silence as a lantern that guides his faith, but this silence is different. I think this is the silence of a severed connection. Whether Asterion believes his master has fully died or abandoned him is unclear, but what is clear is that Asterion has failed to fulfill his destiny. The bedrock of his faith, his master, is gone, and Asterion cannot bear this loss. He killed his master with his own two hands, performed grueling rites to connect with his voice, steeled himself against his own doubts when his master revealed his destiny to him, and now he has failed. Asterion drags himself to the ledge and jumps, his master's sarcophagus in hand, to the city far below. This appears to be the end of the Brotherhood's plans, foiled by Penitente. However, after ending C, we get a post-credit scene. Asterion lies seemingly dead upon the stones, but the Master's sarcophagus cracks. It's clear that the story of the Brotherhood and the Master isn't finished, even if Asterion is. The Brotherhood is still working toward their goal, a goal that I believe is to control the miracle as the High Wills once did in order to bring a new era of orthodoxy to Custodia. Anything beyond that would be pure speculation at this point, but the big takeaway at the post-credit scene is that it's not over. And there you have it, the story and lore of Asterion, the Master, and the Brotherhood in the Mea Culpa DLC. I found the Brotherhood and the Master to be compelling, but it was the character of Asterion that really hooked me. The antagonists of Blasphemous 1, particularly Escobar and Esdras, just landed better for me than those in Blasphemous 2, and I think it's because you really got insight into their characters and built pathos along the way. Asterion felt like a return to that approach as we got to hear his thoughts and see his arc over the course of the DLC. I really enjoyed that. And while his personal story may be over, the story of the Master and the Brotherhood is building towards something that I think could be really special and interesting, and I can't wait to see where it goes. It was so much fun to dig into the main antagonists of the Mea Culpa DLC, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a like, comment with your thoughts about what we've discussed, and be sure to subscribe to the Lore Hunter for more Blasphemous 2 story, lore, and design content. I'm certainly not done discussing the story and lore of the Mea Culpa DLC. I want to discuss the new ending, the story of Hilaria, see if I can figure out Sor Cativa, and much, much more. On top of that, it looks very likely that the Game Kitchen isn't done telling the story of Blasphemous 2, which means I'm not either. Thanks for watching.